but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday Five. I'm Darren Grimes along with Ben Leo, Emily Carver, Lewis Oakley and Patrick Christys. Tonight on the show, Sunak finally delivers common sense and stands up to the Green extreme.
Why crybaby Ramonas need to get over Brexit and get on board with making the country great again.
Rishi Sunak would be mad to implement New Zealand's bonkers smoking ban in this country.
We need forced age verification checks for channel migrants.
And my radical solution to fixing the housing crisis.
It's 8 p.m. and this is the Saturday Five. Welcome to the Saturday Five. Cheers very much for your company. Now, folks, if you want a night of bland, preachy group speak with everyone saying the same thing, the Lib Dem conference has started. It'll be on the other side. But if you like your debate a little bit more spicy, you've come to exactly the right place. I'm here with Emily as usual, but Albie is away and will certainly miss his thoughtful and well-judged contributions. Benjamin is also off and we'll certainly miss... Well, I'll let you know when I think of something. We're joined tonight by our fearless roving reporter here at GB News. It's Ben Leo, the brilliant podcaster and broadcaster Lewis Oakley, and the host of Britain's best drive time news show, our very own Patrick Christys.
Yes, we're all here. So the premise of the show is quite simple. Each of us gets around 60 seconds, sometimes a little bit more, to outline our argument about our chosen topic. Then we all pile in and it all falls apart faster than the government's HS2 plans. And of course, we want to know your views. So please do get in touch. Email us gbviews@gbnews.com. You can tweet us, X us @gbnews. But before we start tearing each other apart, it is your Saturday Night News with Tatiana Sanchez.
Emily, thank you and good evening. This is the latest. A woman arrested after a Land Rover crashed into a prep school in South London, killing 2 children, has been rebailed until January. The 46-year-old was arrested at the scene on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. It happened at an end-of-year tea party at the Study Prep School in Wimbledon in July. 16 people were treated at the scene of the crash. Several, including a 7-month-old girl, were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Boris Johnson has warned Rishi Sunak against delivering a mutilated version of HS2. The former Prime Minister says curtailing over cost were the height of insanity and desperate Treasury-driven nonsense. He's urged the Prime Minister to deliver on the Tories' 2019 levelling up pledge. The government has refused to deny reports claiming the Birmingham to Manchester route will be scrapped. David Cameron has also raised concerns, according to reports in The Times, which claims the planned line to the East Midlands Parkway could also be under threat. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak's considering plans that would effectively ban cigarettes for the next generation. It would entail steadily increasing the legal age for consuming tobacco, as reported in The Guardian. If implemented by 2026, it would mean anyone aged 15 and under now would never be able to buy a cigarette. Smoking costs society £17 billion, according to government research, with £2.4 billion to the NHS alone. Ministers are also understood to be drawing up plans to ban disposable vapes. Anti-monarchy campaigners have staged a protest inside of Buckingham Palace. Members of Republic staged that protest inside the Grand Hall. They unveiled T-shirts which spelled out "Not My King." 6 of the activists involved were briefly detained by security before being escorted out of the front gate. Meanwhile, hundreds of activists marched in Whitehall to London today, calling on the government to U-turn on Brexit and return to the bloc. Clusters of Metropolitan Police officers monitored the demonstration as protesters in blue and yellow handed out flyers. The UK voted to leave the European Union in a referendum in 2016, called by the then Prime Minister David Cameron. And finally, nearly a third of patients have suffered long-term organ damage as a result of COVID-19. That's according to findings of a new study. It says abnormalities in the lungs were almost 14 times higher in those who'd had the virus. Abnormal findings involving the brain and kidneys were 3 and 2 times higher, respectively. And the extent of the damage was often influenced by the severity of their infection, their age and other diseases in the body. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by simply saying play GB News. Now it's back to the Saturday 5.
Thanks, Tatiana. It is Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Emily Carver and we are about to set the world to rights in just under an hour. So let's crack on with tonight's first debate.
Yeah, but we're starting tonight with Ben Leo. And Ben Leo has he's had a pretty pleasant Saturday afternoon. It might be one you're envious of. He's had many admirers join him at the Rejoin March in London. Let's have a look at how he got on.
What do you think of Brexit is?
Idiots. Deluded.
What else do you miss about the EU? Are you saying that Europe needs a bath?
No, with Bath for Europe.
Oh.
No, I like the EU and I love living here, but I also love living in Spain.
You can't just say 60% of Brits want to rejoin. Where's that from?
No newspaper.
Who, The Guardian?
Everything in the EU is elected.
No one in this country voted for Guy Verhofstadt. What do you miss about the EU?
I miss the economic prosperity that we had. The other countries seem to have recovered a lot better from it than we have.
Germany's in a recession though, and we're not. So how's that true?
That looks like a fun day out for Ben. So, Ben, tell us more.
Yeah, oh dear. I mean, that says it all, really. Look, in a week where Keir Starmer's been cozying up to Emmanuel Macron in France in a shady deal to betray 17.4 million Brexit voters, a meeting, by the way, brokered by the bad smell that won't go away, Tony Blair, these losers in London today saw fit to complain about a vote that took place 7 years ago. All they could complain about is airport queues. I haven't seen any of those, by the way. I think they're a myth. And, bizarrely, how their tea cloths from Germany weren't getting delivered because of random custom charges. Now, look, my point is, you've lost the vote. We're not going back into the EU. Stand by democracy and get on board with Brexit. Because at the moment, Brexit's not been allowed to get started. It's been blocked at every turn by the civil service, politicians, the courts, and crybaby losers like these. So get on board with Brexit, Ramonas. It's not changing. Get Britain booming again.
I mean, Ben, looking at the fact that in the news there, Tatiana said they sent the Metropolitan Police out, what the hell were they going to do? Fight each other with hummus? I mean, it's just obscene.
Throw muesli at each other.
And a lot of them looked quite old as well. Now, I've got absolutely nothing against elderly people, but wasn't the whole narrative that we were stealing young people's futures by voting for Brexit? Now, a lot of those, they looked like they quite old, possibly had homes in Spain for many years.
It felt like the world's biggest nursing home down there today. Lots of pale, lots of stale, the same thing they accused Brexiteers of being, by the way. And I think, Patrick, you had a...
Well, exactly that. And this is the thing. Again, as you rightly said there, absolutely nothing against old people whatsoever. Far from it. I think these are our greatest generation that people, frankly, our age, should be learning a heck of a lot from. But it is the hypocrisy of what Brexiteers were accused of being. old, pale, you know, too white, etc. I don't know if we might have a picture at some point as well of this bus that was on its way to yeah, we go. Look at that, right? OK, so look, can you imagine if that was a bus full of Brexiteers? So they like having sex with flags. That was one of the accusations, wasn't it? Well, there's a lot of flags there for them. They seem to be proudly wearing close to their body. Quite old. I can't see any racial distinctions there other than them being white. If that was a bus full of Brexiteers, Remainers would be getting stuck right in, wouldn't they?
I remember Jon Snow. Jon Snow said that a Brexit demonstration, a pro-Brexit demonstration, was too white. I mean, do you not think that demonstration, Lewis, is too white?
Do you know what I think? I think none of this is helpful. I mean, Ben, in your monologue, you're saying we need to come together and get behind it. Meanwhile, you're calling them losers, unwashed, get on board, like, they're old, like, stale, too white. Like, come on, we do... I agree with you that we need to come together. That Brexit ship has sailed. I don't think that it's helped by people still, you know, wishing that we were in. I do get your point on that. But I also think that the Brexiteers, like, get with the programme. It's not been a success. I don't think Nigel Farage would say it's been a success.
No one's allowed it to start.
Do you know what? I think it's quite cute that they all went down there in their, you know, their flags. I mean, they're clearly deluded.
What?
They think something is going to...
Deluded, that's going to help.
And they go, no, I don't mean to...
Come on, guys, why don't you agree with us?
I don't mean deluded in a nasty way, but just because I do not think we are going to rejoin the European Union. It's just not going to happen. But I think it's quite sweet that they had a little day out in London. You know, I'm being very patronising here, but why not? They are very patronising to Brexiteers. But
it's a day off for everyone else.
Hang on, I'm going to come in here and rain a little bit on your parade.
Please.
Because if you look at the latest polling, and I've got it here to hand, only 9% of people think Brexit has been a success. So it's hardly surprising.
According to what? Polls?
Well, yes, a poll, but you... OK...
Is that the same poll that said...
It's an indicator.
Is that the same poll that said Remain would win by 60% and that Trump would lose to Hillary Clinton?
No, but what I'm saying is, now, I always take polling with a pinch of salt, like everyone should, but that is an indicator to suggest why some people might feel like they have a chance
they're being fed some fake doses of optimism from scammy pollsters. I mean, even that guy in the VT said to me 60% of people now want to rejoin the EU. He said it was a YouGov poll. I held him up on it. It turned out he was talking nonsense.
But why are we still fighting these Remainer...
Well, because I'll tell you that you've just led me nicely onto what I wanted to say, which is this. I actually don't agree with Emily. I do think Brexit is in peril. And, you know, I'm someone that's talked about Brexit being in peril for some time. But this time, I really think Sir Keir Starmer with Blair behind him, as you just said, the turd that won't flush, all pushing for us to have associate membership of the EU. That's taken us back in. That is a betrayal of our vote. And I think that's never been more of a fearful prospect.
Can I just quickly point out on this? I actually think that the more Keir Starmer opens his mouth, the more unpopular his policies are, which makes a hung parliament more likely, which makes the Lib Dems more likely to be the power brokers, which makes a second referendum or rejoining the EU even more likely. So, yes, I agree.
Lewis?
I actually don't want that. I think that we do need to get on board because small businesses are really hurting at the moment. We need to really figure out how to get through that red tape. We're still paying the EU, like, billions of pounds a year as well. It's not been a success, but I do think going back is not going to be... It's not going to be any more helpful.
It doesn't help, does it, when, you know, the government tries to get rid of a tiny bit of EU red tape around housing, around this nutrient neutrality rules, and, you know, it's... Everyone is, you know, throwing their toys out the pram because it's the most awful thing they've ever heard. I mean, it's very difficult for us to do anything positive.
By the way, just on Starmer, he was cruising to an election victory. The Tories are hapless, and the moment... I mean, he should have done a Joe Biden and hidden in his basement. The moment he opens his mouth, he has about 3 or 4 consecutive gaffes on migration, EU returns bills, cozying up to Macron in France, exchanging gifts. He should have just kept his mouth shut, but he could have scuppered it now, in my opinion.
Well, you might be right, actually. These people might not actually be deluded. We may well end up back in the European Union. Let us know what you think at home. But anyway, it's high time we debated our next topic. And after around 6 months on air, this show has been, we are breaking fresh new ground on the Saturday 5 and bravely venturing into uncharted waters. Someone other than Darren is going to talk about migration tonight. And it's Patrick Christie's, and he's about to kick off. Take it away.
We need to have forced mandatory age verification checks for anybody coming across the channel claiming to be a child. The Home Office figures show that between 2016 and June 2023, 49% of people who claim to be a child who had that case disputed turned out, shock horror, to be adults. Yes, that's right. So now I think our starting point should be we just don't believe you. And the indicators are there, aren't they? If you've broken into Britain and ditched your documents en route, that, to me, is a pretty strong indication that you are willing to lie about who you are, where you're from, and how old you are. But the latest from the Human Rights Brigade is this. We couldn't possibly give wrist x-rays or dental checks for people because children will flee in fear of a scientific procedure. Lie. Why would you run away from something if you know you are a child? And you know what? If they came off the boats at Dover, tripped over and broke their wrist or banged their tooth, they'd be straight down the local A&E begging for a wrist x-ray or a dental check on the taxpayer's dime. The other thing from the Human Rights Brigade, which completely contradicts everything they have to say, is that at the moment we have so many children being wrongly classified as adults, and that is a crying shame. Fine, all right then. Well, why don't we have more mandatory scientific medical age verification checks? That would stop that, wouldn't it? At the moment, we have human rights lawyers and activists who are willing to lie for channel migrants who are also lying about their age, and that needs to stop. I'm sorry, but I just don't believe you anymore.
Well said, Patrick. I mean, the point of the matter is here, all those people that we've just seen at these EU marches, right, they're all for all of this, and they are the kind of people that are so hysterical about the kinds of things that you're mentioning. And if you ask me, Patrick, someone that comes here who says, I'm going to turn up uninvited, illegally, doesn't have a right to privacy, right? They can't turn around and say, well, actually, you're not going to be able to do a scan of me, because they have actually broken the law. We need to know who is here and how they are actually unfairly treating the system.
What do you think about that?
Well, I'd say, first of all, how much is this going to cost? How many more millions and billions are you throwing at this?
Can I quickly, because I do, it's a really good point, but on that, at the moment, it's costing us so much to go through ridiculous kind of eye surface level checks that have to go through numerous different things, then court cases, then hotels. So I do think it would be cheaper just to do an X-ray.
I get that, but say you figure it out, you get your X-ray, you've done that, you've cost it all up, fine. Then what? They're still here. You can't throw them back in the sea.
But the point is, regardless,
they're here.
You can't put a price on national security. And also, by the way...
No, I get that.
Security of our kids. How many times have we seen Abdul, 13-year-old, in a classroom with young teenage girls who turns out to be 40 years old with a massive beard? That can't happen in this country.
No, I know, but those are rare instances that make the news because they are rare.
They're not rare.
But we do have to have a way to...
These guys come over the channel, they lob their phones in the channel, they lob their passports in the channel so no one can trace them.
No, I get it, but what is proving their age going to do?
Well, my argument would then be, if you've lied about that, then you should be deported.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Well, this country seems incapable of deporting anyone, even foreign criminals, so I'm not sure this is going to mean more deportations. I think you raised an important point. We have had cases of people pretending to be children and ending up in local schools in this country, which I think everyone thinks is absolutely absurd. Do I think this is the main issue when it comes to the Channel migrant crossings? No. Do I think that this is going to happen? Also, no. The Home Office have been advised that, you know, there are issues with radiation harm, there are issues with it being unreliable, there are issues with no method proves exact age. So all of these things, you can see, would be disputed by lawyers.
Absolutely, but, you know, I had a bit of an epiphany the other day, and it's been great.
Here we go.
It's been great. I stopped caring. I stopped caring about what these idiots have to say, because they are lying. I had a human rights lawyer on my show the other day who looked me in the eye and said to me, genuinely, that even if someone broke into his own home, he wouldn't want them detained. That's obviously a lie. I would quite like to put that to the test, but, you know, I can't really get away with that kind of stuff.
Well, you can't prove he's a liar here on air.
No, I can't prove he's a liar here on air. But, I mean, if someone
You're assuming he's a liar.
I think it's a reasonable assumption. If someone broke into his house, he'd call the police and go on them locked up, wouldn't you? And then, also, now you've got this lot, the human rights activists saying, oh, well, you know, they would flee. They would flee if they were told that they had to have an X-ray. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. So when you're dealing with these kind of people trying to make up all of this stuff, sorry, but you've lost me.
And actually, the argument is it could even be a deterrent. If people know that before they come here, they're going to get tested for their age and honest background before they arrive, they're not going to be able to scam people by sitting in classrooms next to young teenage girls.
I think they'd still come, but they may well abscond, so it may actually be even worse for our national security.
And if you're a child escaping bombs and bullets, which is what we are told these people are coming over to get away from instead of wines and cheeses and baguettes in France, why then would you not want to cross every single line that you had to for the authorities in order to be allowed to stay in a safe country? Right? Why?
At the moment, we are using a survey and a study from Gillette, the razor company, to dictate how old we think some of these people are. So Gillette, the best Afghans can get. I mean, it writes itself, doesn't it? But if you're looking at it like that, then seriously, why wouldn't they want to nullify any risk of a child being classed as an adult, but by doing scientific medical stuff? You'd want it, wouldn't you? I don't know.
Look, this is a tricky situation. That's why it's gone on so long. There is not a solution to this. I just don't think that what you're proposing is going to really make a spit of difference, if I'm honest.
And can I just say, this argument's a bit of a red herring regardless, because we don't want them here in the first place. I don't want to be testing people for their age. I don't want them here in the first place. Sort borders out,
absolutely,
stop the votes.
absolutely. I mean, and that, Ben, goes back to what you were saying earlier. That leads us on to needing to leave the ECHR and actually delivering Brexit, right?
Well, there's an argument that leaving the ECHR won't change much, but I think we need to adopt an Australian-style policy where you physically turn back the boats. I don't care what all the NGOs say and the crybabies. Turn the boats back, like we saw in Australia, and they'll stop coming.
You know what? If there's a suspicion someone is not a child and they're claiming to be a child, then there should be an age check. I think that should be, you know... That's common sense, I think. But anyway, we've got to move on, sorry. Still to come tonight, Lewis Oakley has a plan which he says will fix the house building crisis, and we will all give our verdict on Rishi Sunak's net zero plans in grime time. But next up, I'll be discussing the planned anti-smoking measures that are being considered. Is this nanny statism gone too far? Or perhaps it's a welcome fight back against smoking in our society? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, cheers very much for your emails about tonight's topics. Alison Fisk has written in, and Fisk is on the case, because Fisk has written in to say she watched what you got from people on the street there, Ben, and she says, did I hear that right? Did that Brexit protester say he wanted Britain back in the EU because he likes living in Spain?
See ya.
So effectively, we should rejoin the EU so he can live in a different country. It's a good point. John Coy's written in, Darren, please tell your panel that Brexiteers do not want to rejoin the EU. The simple fact is that Sunak and the Tories have failed to reap the benefits of Brexit. I think John makes a good point. People are dissatisfied with the government, not Brexit. Now, it's time for our next debate. Up next, Emily. And Emily says she's aflame with anger at the news that nanny state Britain is planning to impose some of the strictest anti-smoking rules in the world. It's time for the Carver Palaver.
Yes, so do we want to be like ISIS or Bhutan? They both tried banning tobacco, and guess what happened? They ended up backtracking pretty quickly. Bhutan ended their ban in 2020. Believe it or not, because tobacco smugglers were bringing COVID into the country. Now it looks like Rishi Sunak is pondering doing something similar. Well, not an all-out ban, he's not planning on cigarette sales, but a ban that would essentially stop young people from ever buying cigarettes. They do this in a cunning way by steadily increasing the legal age for buying cigs year on year. Now, this is what has been done in New Zealand, one of the more authoritarian so-called liberal democracies in the world. They've done this. So, if the government decided to do it, and it's something that Labour's Wes Streeting has also expressed support for too, you could actually have a situation in which someone who is, say, 41 could go out and buy a pack of fags, but his 40-year-old mate would be turned away. Now, one MP is reported to have said, you're going to end up with newly elected MPs surreptitiously asking Michael Gove if he'll buy cigarettes for them at the local Tesco. It's just bizarre. It is just bizarre, particularly considering Michael Gove is reportedly in favour of this move, despite the fact he took his own smoking breaks in a special hut built for him on the roof of his departmental office. Again, it's do as I say, not as I do. Now, we all know smoking is a killer, no one denies that, but this is a truly unworkable policy. Well, there you go.
Absolutely.
I mean, who disagrees with me?
Do you need a cigarette after that?
I
don't smoke. I prefer a little vape every now and again.
Well, it'll be after that before long, though, Emily. That's the thing, isn't it?
Let's go after Patrick. You like a cigarette every now and again. Sorry to out you.
I smoke. I know it's bad for me, OK? Everybody knows that it's bad for them, OK? But it's up to me whether or not I want to do that, right? And we will have a farcical situation where, like you just said there, you know, we're going to end up with a 45-year-old walking into an offie, desperately trying to buy a packet of Camel Blues, being turned down. I mean, just from a purely political point on this, where are the votes in this?
Yeah.
Where are the votes for Rishi Sunak in doing this? No one's going to go out and vote Tory in the next general election because their next-door neighbour might be banned from smoking.
But there's a guy called Javed Khan who was the CEO of Barnardo's, the charity, right? And he came up with all these proposals that the government is now considering. He wanted to ban people in social housing, in council homes, from smoking on their own property, in their own homes. I mean, this stuff is extremely interventionist, isn't it?
Look, I get it, and I worry about the nanny state too, but we do ban things in this country. Like, you know, we have guns are banned, drugs are banned. You know, it's fine to have certain things that are banned, and smoking is a killer. Like, I think it's 74,000 die of it a year, and then you've got the 8,000 people that die from passive smoking.
Hang on. I don't accept that. Me having a fag isn't going to shoot someone, is it? Right? Me having a cigarette isn't going to
second-hand smoking, still a killer.
Well,
and look, I will say this, on the kids' point, like, I am someone that never thought that I would get addicted to cigarettes. I had my first cigarette at 19 and then was hooked and trying to quit for like 10 years. So I actually do think the whole never having a cigarette is the best way to prevent it. It's not good. I get it can, you know, take the stress off, it feels like that, but I actually think the best method for getting rid of this is never to try it.
But hang on, Lewis, I think we have a graphic that I can put up on the screen, do we? It's a graph that basically shows that young people are smoking less and less and less and less and less. Do we really need to ban it anyway, Ben?
Well, they're smoking less because now they're vaping.
Yeah, but that's so much better for your health, at least.
I must admit, I smoked as a kid, 18, 19, 20, maybe until I was 25. I've just got back from Vegas, where before that I wasn't a smoker, I wasn't a vapor, but at the tables you can smoke and vape indoors, get plied with drinks all night, you don't need to get up, you don't need to leave the tables. I smoked a vape now and then at the tables, and I've come back and started vaping again. My thoughts on the ban of smoking is I don't want a nanny state or a big state government coming in and creeping on our lives any more than we've got now. And I think, in actual fact, the best method is using that money for a smoking ban to get people fit, get them lean, get them strong, and naturally people will stop smoking after that because they'll see the effect it has on their health. If you're fit and you're training and you're smoking and you go on the treadmill the next day, you can see what effect it has.
There is an argument that you pay for it, your own healthcare in tax, by the way.
There's our, sorry to interrupt you, there's our graphic which shows, well, you can see there, across all age ranges, smoking is just going down and down and down and
imagine the flat line if we just ban it.
I think they're just, you know...
Don't lie to me, sorry, but don't again lie to me and say, oh, we need to do this to take the pressure off the NHS, whilst you're simultaneously pumping millions of people into a country. You're not building infrastructure, you're not employing enough doctors and nurses, you're not doing all of that. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't be banning people from doing this, because the next thing it'll be, you're only allowed an allotted amount of chocolate or fatty foods every single day. This is the next thing.
But is there not an element of sort of sneer and contempt for working class people who may, dare I say, enjoy the odd glass of wine with a cigarette in their hand, to think, oh, OK, I'm going to relax, wind down from a hard day at work? What's so bad about that? And as Patrick says, they're paying an enormous amount of tax, and all this is going to do, if you ban it, is enable a black market
But
to
I
pop
think
up.
if you ask most smokers, they're saying, I'm trying to quit. I know it's bad for me. I want to quit.
Yeah, I think that about fatty food, but guess what? I still shove a donut down me hole once and twice in any given day.
It's just so annoying because I think this is what gets me the most. People like Michael Gove, who likes to smoke.
He likes a party as well, I'll leave it at that.
He's still pro this ban. And if Albie were here, he'd say, it's a great idea, even though we know he likes a cheeky cigarette. Sorry, Albie. So, it's just so much do as I say, not as I do, which just drives me mad. And they listen to the public health lobby far too much. The public health lobby, if we took all of their recommendations on board, we would not be allowed to eat anything that contains sugar. We'd not be able to eat anything that contains salt. We'd not be allowed to do anything.
Yeah, well, exactly. We'd cease to exist, right? We cease to have agency over our own lives.
We would.
But anyway, moving on. Still ahead, though, Lewis Oakley is going to explain how we can easily solve the house building crisis. Now, this is an issue we've been struggling for over a few years now, so you may think you might have mentioned it before now. But first, let's get your latest weather from Craig.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to Sunday, a very different day compared to today. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. That's all courtesy of this area of low pressure. It will move the area of high pressure away towards the continent, giving a very unsettled day for some of us. May hang on to the largely settled conditions at times across the southeast. But as we go into tonight, you can see this area of rain gradually working its way eastwards across many parts of the UK. Heaviest the rain across Scotland, the southeast just remaining largely dry with the clearest of the skies. But for all of us, a milder night than last night. We will see lows falling not much lower than around 10 to 12 degrees. But we do start Sunday off on a rather wet note across parts of Wales into the Midlands. This area of rain will gradually work its way northwards as we go through the course of the day, turning quite heavy for parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here, but it will turn brighter and drier across the south. So some sunshine to end the day here. Feeling quite warm, 21 degrees down towards the southeast. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by that strong wind. Into Monday, the overnight rain clearing, really leaving a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers. Some of the showers potentially quite heavy and thundery across the northern half of the UK, with the best of the sunshine down towards the south. But the unsettled weather is set to continue as we go into next week, potentially turning very wet and windy on Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Still ahead, Patrick may have stolen his thunder on immigration, but Darren is going to console himself by lashing out at the poor old eco-warriors. So stay tuned for Grind Time. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Lots of you have been getting in touch. I've just received your emails in my hand. Alex has written in and he's telling us to stop the lies. He says, is it possible for you to stop your presenters telling lies? Labour has said several times they're not going to rejoin the EU. Keir Starmer said he wanted to keep standards. And what's wrong with that? Please stick to the facts. Yes, but there is some reading between the lines going on, and there has been quite a lot of talk of associate membership and the like. And what's the point of Brexit if you don't diverge? Anyway, moving on. Christian says, surely child illegal immigrants get priority and extra generous treatment. This is why it's important to check their age. Yes, that is one of the reasons. And what else have we got? Matthew, smoking, he says. Great idea, banning smoking, thereby creating another illicit market for crime to serve. Yes, that's the point Darren made, isn't it? Black market, prohibition, that's what it leads to. Anyway, shall we move on to our next debate? Darren is going to tell us why he thinks Rishi Sunak is finally starting to deliver. Yes, it's time for grime time.
Yes, happy days, hallelujah, folks, because earlier this week, Rishi Sunak dared to loosen Britain's net zero noose just a smidge. But you'd think that just a smidge he'd announced was fracking in Hyde Park. Sky News warned us that the US presidential failure turned green grifter Al Gore disapproves. And I said, Al Gore, the millionaire eco-preacher, Al, when you give up your private jets, maybe then you can lecture Sandra from Scarborough on a combi boiler, mate. And Chris Packham, the narcissist eco-crusader, thinks breaking the law for climate change is ethically responsible. He even got a Channel 4 special to say it. Chris, How about you pack your vegan leather shopper, a packet of bugs for the road, and take your moral high ground straight to China? Because we Brits contribute just 1% of global CO2. But the green extreme want us to bear 100% of the guilt. We're a country that's already cut carbon emissions by 40% since the 1970s. The real tragedy here is the likes of Barbara Bolton, 87-year-old of Greater Manchester. Barbara froze to death last winter and she was found slumped at the kitchen table by her grandson. This is the generation that built Britain, whilst these prats build wind farms. They want us to rely on wind and solar, like they're the Superman of energy. Spoiler alert, folks, they're not. They're more like dodgy sidekicks who never show up when you need them. They're more Rodney and Del Boy than Batman and Robin. When they tried to guilt-trip Sunak with his own kids, he had what I thought was the perfect comeback. He says, it's not them forking out 10,000 quid, it's families up and down the country. And I say amen to that, Rishi. Finally, folks, a glimmer of common sense in this net zero circus that, quite frankly, risks both lives and livelihoods. Now, Ben Leo, you've got something to say about all of this.
Well, you probably expect me to praise Rishi, and actually when he first announced the net zero plan, I thought to myself, oh, well done, Rishi, you found your Conservative hat once more. But then when I woke up 10 minutes later, I realised, actually, all Rishi's doing here is pushing the can 5 years down the road. He's still pushing the climate scam that, in my opinion, is cyclical. I don't believe in man-made climate change. They say 97% of scientists agree, but I also say, 97% of scientists don't want to get defunded either. So if
the climate is changing. But the climate is changing.
No one denies that. But in hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, we've had cyclical periods where, for example, 400 or 500 years, there was a period called the Roman warming period where temperatures were abnormally high. It's all based on modelling, as we saw during COVID. Don't trust your modelling. But if Rishi wants to come out and be brave and actually get some balls and appeal to proper Conservatives, not a bunch of wets, then say we're scrapping net zero completely. Don't just say, oh, we're going to cut the ban on petrol and diesel cars by 5 years, and everyone's like, oh, amazing, thank you, Rishi. It's nonsense.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? It could be that this is all a bit of a diversion tactic from the fact that legally, by law, the government has to reach net zero by 2050. It's written into our statute book. They have to do it. So, I mean, whether it's 5 years delay or not on ban of new petrol and diesel means nothing.
And I'll tell you what that brings to mind for me, Emily. Theresa May is touring studios like she's some kind of movie actress promoting herself on stage and screen. Great. And actually, she's the one that passed this into law to try and give herself some form of legacy. And we're seeing the sheer impact of what that policy means for Brits.
But do you think it's a good thing that we are investing in renewable technology, that we are looking to be more sustainable?
Well,
that we are, thinking about these things.
They keep telling us, though, Lewis, don't they, that actually these things are cheap as chips, that actually we should be going hell for leather on renewables. Then why do they need such massive taxpayer subsidy?
No, listen, I actually agreed with some of what you said, because I think when it comes to net zero, and I think we all want a better planet. We only have one planet, so we do want to look after it. But I do think that basically the pressure, the financial pressure on working class people and poor people was ridiculous. That wasn't fair. I am actually a big favour of let's make the rich pay for it. Let's, if we're worried about carbon, let's stop private jets from taking off and landing, one. Number two, radical solution is, much like with ULEZ in London, if the air quality is so bad, that should start affecting property prices. Let's bring those millionaire mansions down.
By the way,
I would do stuff like that, where you actually put it at the rich to brunt the burden.
Why should it be anyone who has to bear the particular burden? If you had, some people would argue that all you need is a carbon tax of some description, and then everyone has to compete on those grounds. So, industries have to adapt because otherwise they'll have to...
But industries are... This is the thing. I think we are getting there. And I think, look, the pushing it back thing, I think it was actually the right thing to do. But I think we don't want to lose momentum in... Look, we do want to find new ways to power... You might not like wind, fine, but let's find new ways to power our country. Let's find new ways to carbon capture. Let's be leading in the technology. I think that is something we could all get behind, right?
Look, this is the thing for me, which is, again, the hypocrisy of politicians and all of this. If we are being told that there is an emergency, it's an emergency, right? I had Steve Reed on, who's the Shadow Environment Sec. I said to him, have you got an electric car? He says, no. I said to him, have you got a heat pump? No. And it doesn't plan on getting one or either anytime soon as well. Well, I'm sorry, but if I was the Shadow Environment Secretary, I'd be trying to lead the way. He talks about, and as we all do, we've got to be world leading. We've got to be world leading. Well, why aren't you leading your own home, mate?
Well, it's the same with the Just Stop Oil and XR losers. They're always complaining that the planet's going to burst in 10 years, when in actual fact, the guys that fund Extinction Rebellion, the Climate Emergency Fund in California, all the directors are flying to second homes in Ireland and LA all the time and flying around the world on private jets. If there was an emergency, stop doing that. If your house is on fire, you'd get out immediately and call the emergency services.
So you're at Al Gore.
Could I just ask quickly on this, what you think about if we are world leading, right, and we'd stuck to the original task and everything, do you think that would make a blind bit of difference to China or India?
Oh, no, I totally agree with that. We are, as you said, we are 1%, so I get that. I actually think the argument for this lies in actually getting prepared for it. If what Ben's saying is, like, you know, it happens, the climate changes, it's just natural, not a spit we can do about it, maybe we should actually put more money and resources into, OK, well, what are we going to do? If this floods, how do we move people? How do we build
in
no one talks about that.
Scientists would vehemently disagree with what Ben said about it not being anthropogenic.
Well,
of course, that is...
You can't, I'm afraid, Ben, but we'll be coming back to you for more, I'm sure. Still ahead, the moment we've all been waiting for, as Lewis single-handedly fixes the house building crisis. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Thank you very much for your emails as well. Now, sorry, I've got the giggles now. Robbie has got in touch. He says, I'm 71 years old, have never smoked. I always thought it was naff and uncool, and it still is today. Why do people do it?
It's nice, it's fun.
Well, you know what? We've got Freddie has also got in touch, and he'll explain exactly why. He says, I'm one of the 9.4% of over 60s who smoke, and it's one of the few joys left in life. Nothing like a fag with a cup of tea or coffee or a cold pint of something delicious. It's my choice. Nobody forces me. Great show as usual. Well, there you go. And Dave, he thinks it's a climate scam. So he agrees with you, Ben.
Here, Dave.
He says we need to scrap the Climate Change Act of 2008.
Yes.
There you go. Need to kill the whole thing. And finally, on EVs, I'll wrap this up.
Yeah.
Claire says, nobody seems to have realised yet that with electric vehicles weighing around 2.5 tonnes, our roads won't be able to withstand it.
Right,
Should
that's
talk
a good
about it on
point.
breakfast tomorrow.
So there you go.
Absolutely. Now, it's time for our next debate. And up next, solving the house building crisis has foxed some of the greatest intellects in the country, but not Lewis Oakley. He's about to fix it in just 60 seconds. Oakley's outraged and he's going to tell us why.
Rent has increased at the fastest rate since records began. Our housing crisis is no secret, and it affects everything. When you're spending over half of your wage on just where you live, you don't have that money to go out and have fun. You don't have that money to plan for your child and get an extra room. You don't have any money to live where you work. And it's the failure of successive governments. This isn't a left or a right thing. None of them have built enough houses. So I have a radical solution to fix this. I think we should ban politicians from putting their targets for house building in their manifestos. Instead, let's create an independent body that sets the target for the government. And crucially, if you fall behind on such a basic part of the job, we go to an automatic general election at the end of the year. We cannot have this anymore. We cannot have politicians marking their own homework. We need a political system that says, look, we might want to do stuff with HS2 or education in our manifestos, fine. But the bare minimum, which is housing, that has to be done or you're gone.
Well, if we do that, though, is there not a risk that actually we'll end up with more general elections than ad breaks on a news channel, dare I say?
Good.
And then, you know, be totally snookered because politicians lie every 2 seconds.
Yeah, but this is about holding them to account. If we create an independent body that says, none of your nonsense, this is what you've got to do, how much more focused would their minds be?
Well, could I politely push back on a potential fatal flaw in this, which is that it's down to planning permission. And let's say that you end up with a load of Labour councils and a Tory government. All the Labour councils have to do will be to refuse planning permission in that area, then the Tories will miss their
call
target,
an election,
No, but this is the whole thing. If that pressure is on them, that you've got to do this by the end of the year, then they can start looking at laws. Then they can start changing the whole system and saying, well, look, this has got to go, this has got to change. This is so crucial. I don't want to hear any more excuses anymore for it. Oh, we can't do it because of Labour. Oh, we can't do it because of this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but another thing is, do we trust independent bodies? Sounds a bit like a quango to me. We know they're not always the best at coming up with targets and also then holding the government to account.
Why don't we just
can anybody be truly independent?
Well, look, half the problem is that you've got developers hoarding up land and sitting on it, waiting for the price to go up over the decades and not being forced to build on it. But in actual fact, look, you've got 500 people a day crossing the... Sorry to go back to the small boats crisis, but I think it's very important. But you've got 500 people a day, minimum, coming across the channel on most days, taking up our housing stock. And you've got, for example, in Brighton, where I live, 10 years ago, the housing waiting list was about 20,000. I dread to think what it's like now. And you've got all these... not just illegal migrants, the Tories haven't got a grip on legal migration either. So on what planet are you gonna sort the housing crisis when you're not building houses, developers are hogging up the land, and you've got an invasion of the southern border?
But this, again, it comes to excuses. Oh, it's immigration. Oh, it's the Labour councils. Oh, it's this. If you said to politicians, you have got to do this, by heaven or earth, make it happen, they will do it, because they don't want to go for a general election.
Well, another point, though, would be, what about those people who are watching tonight who say, well, actually, I quite like Britain's green, unspoiled and pleasant land, and you're wanting to pave all over it?
I would say
what do those people do?
Only 2% of the UK is actually built on with houses. It's just not an excuse.
Can I make a revelation?
Go on.
I voted for the Greens in the local elections.
Uh-oh.
Why?
How did that work out?
Bins?
Just pure NIMBYism. There's a developer threatening to build on a really nice spot of green land where we go for walks to the...
So you're to blame?
Yeah, I don't want those... By the way, those new build houses, you know, if they were going to build nice, decent, characterful houses instead of toy town estates, I might be more swayed. But new builds, sorry to anyone who has a new build house, if you're in a bedroom upstairs and you hear people making pancakes downstairs.
Is there an argument to be said that actually, if you do want to own a home, OK, then you shouldn't be going out and going to bars, and you shouldn't be, you know, spending money elsewhere. You should cut back on your holidays, and your primary focus in life should be saving to buy a property.
No, it shouldn't be such a hard thing. We all need a house over our head. I don't think it should be this, oh, well, you've got to sacrifice for it. I think it should be pretty simple, that we can just get a house, it's affordable, it doesn't cost half your wage.
People don't work hard enough, they're entitled, they think they want everything delivered on a plate. I don't think people know how to graft much anymore, so I think you've got a good point there, Pat.
Yeah.
That's an argument. I mean, I still get, by the way, it should be easier. I'm not saying that, but I do think, you know, I mean, it does sound like you want it all, mate. Shall I throw in a Porsche there as well?
If you want. I don't think wanting housing an affordable thing is really wanting it all. It's really the bare minimum.
You know what? I think the 2%, oh, we've only built on 2% or whatever of the country, is a bit disingenuous, because obviously people don't want to live in the middle of nowhere. What you have is huge, really high density in areas where people want to live, which does make the quality of life go down in those areas. And also, it would help, yes, if we didn't just constantly build the most ugliest buildings ever. Look back to previous generations. We built the most beautiful housing relatively cheaply, I would have assumed, for normal, ordinary people.
I just wonder if we're going to see a retreat, right? Are we going to see a retreat? If Britain becomes impossible to home own in and rents become impossibly high, at what point are we going to see people not coming here or leaving?
I think we're already seeing it. I think loads of people my age are thinking, what's the point? Like, I'm going to
go.
Well, this is the thing. Where do you go? I mean, I know Australia's trying to get a load of us, but I think that's the thing. But once that happens and loads of Brits start saying, this is the new UK, we're all going here.
There is a problem in this country without being able to actually build anything, isn't there? Yeah. But anyway, that is the end of our show. Thank you very much to our guests tonight, Ben Leon and, of course, Lewis Oakley. Cheryl says, Patrick is my favourite GB News presenter 99% of the time, but I love Ben Leo. We should see more of him on GB News, brilliant journalist and a gooner. He needs his own programme. David says, great to see Emily on for 4 hours this morning from 6 a.m. and now treated to some more from 8 p.m. Exactly. I think that's our work ethic. Now, next up, it's the brilliant Mark Dolan. You'll see Emily tomorrow morning, though. Cheers very much for watching. We'll see you next week. Here's your latest weather from Craig.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to Sunday, a very different day compared to today. Spells of heavy rain, especially across the northern half of the UK. That's all courtesy of this area of low pressure. It will move the area of high pressure away towards the continent, giving a very unsettled day for some of us. May hang on to the largely settled conditions at times across the southeast. But as we go into tonight, you can see this area of rain gradually working its way eastwards across many parts of the UK. Heaviest the rain across Scotland, the southeast just remaining largely dry with the clearest of the skies. But for all of us, a milder night than last night. We will see lows falling not much lower than around 10 to 12 degrees. But we do start Sunday off on a rather wet note across parts of Wales into the Midlands. This area of rain will gradually work its way northwards as we go through the course of the day, turning quite heavy for parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. A thoroughly wet afternoon to come here, but it will turn brighter and drier across the south. So some sunshine to end the day here. Feeling quite warm, 21 degrees down towards the southeast. Elsewhere, the temperature's tempered somewhat by that strong wind. Into Monday, the overnight rain clearing, really leaving a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers. Some of the showers potentially quite heavy and thundery across the northern half of the UK, with the best of the sunshine down towards the south. But the unsettled weather is set to continue as we go into next week, potentially turning very wet and windy on Wednesday.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick.